Welcome to episode 33 of the Ape and Bird NFT show. We're recording this on Thursday, April 20th. I am joined today by special co-host Boot, who has been with us a couple of times already throughout this year, the start of 2023. If you're listening for the first time in 2023, Steve is away at the moment, but I believe he's actually going to be back in May. So maybe the second or third week of May. So really looking forward to having Steve back on the show. But we've been joined by Boot again today, which is amazing to have. Boot, welcome back to the show, and thanks for joining us.
No worries. I'm happy to be the ringer, the co-host every time. But I'm
Yes.
here again, and I'm here to talk about Web3 and all the exciting things that are going on in the market right now, because it's exciting times, right? Like this is bull
Well,
season again. Yeah.
no, I want to say I like to normally take the optimistic view, but I'm going to say, Boot, NFTs feel as close dead to me that I've ever felt before, and which is very contradictory to what I said, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago on this show, where I said, geez, I feel like maybe NFTs are starting to bottom.
Mm.
And maybe we still are. Maybe I'm in the delusional part where we're about to have an uptick at some point, but I think that's a little bit of hopium on my
Well,
behalf at the moment.
the thing that I noticed is because I haven't really been paying too much attention to the market, but I jumped into a Discord that I'm part of, and everybody's like just buying shit coins, and I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, NFTs are dead. We're trading shit coins now. So the narrative has kind of shifted. I think because now most of those DJing communities are just playing the shitcoin angle, like they're just not into NFTs now. I think they'll come back when the shitcoin meta changes back to NFTs. So a few people in the space, like I talked to, we were going to put out like another mini project, but like they're like, there's no point now because DJs aren't focused on NFTs. So I think that's probably why it feels the most dead. And then Blur is, it's doing its thing, but I think that the liquidity from the first time around is kind of, it's either been wasted or withdrawn, so like it's not another liquidity event coming like that is not really going to prop the market up so much. So although you're seeing good volume on Blur, you're seeing shit volume on OpenSea, and I think OpenSea is really, to me, probably the sales volume, right? So I mean, I'm interested to see like sales on Blur that were held and like for purchase as opposed to wash or to for earning rewards. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
I think there's a bit of a damning statistic that I saw, which I sent to you just before we went on air, from John Carlo, who I think is one of the sort of best thinkers in the space. So if you're not following John Carlo on Twitter, I would highly recommend. But essentially, he has put out a tweet an hour ago saying there's been an incredible drop off in unique NFT buyers and sellers in the
mm,
last week. Less than 10,000 wallets now across all platforms. So not just OpenSea, but Blur, LooksRare,
yeah.
X2Y2, etc. That's a pretty damning statistic for me.
Well, I think part of it is that that number was always inflated, right? I think that everybody who's a DJ has multiple wallets, right? So that 10,000 might not even be 10,000, but it probably, let's say that it is, right? Let's say that it's 10,000 actual unique people versus just 10,000 unique wallets trading. Because I don't know how provably can demonstrate what a unique user is. I guess it's a guess, right? But in the past, you would have had probably people with like five wallets actively trading from all five wallets because there was just lots of money to be made. People had allow lists on everything. Like it was just, I remember I was using multiple wallets, right? So it's like, and now I just have my one because there's not much going on. So that could be part of it. This could always have been the real number all along. But then I guess then if you're on Twitter, it seems super quiet, right? Like there's a lack of people who are in the space. So I think from 2021, we had a huge boost of people, and I think that they were still hanging around, kind of like in the downturn in 2022, right? Because there was still like a lot of hopium about where the market would go. But then 2022 is coming in, so it's like people are going, and even at the end of the year, though, there was still like a lot of hopium, and there was like might have lost, say, 50% of the original people from 2021 at the end of 2022, but there's still quite a lot. But now, even those like diehard, you know, flippers and degens, like I just don't see them anymore at all. So it's like, and the influencers, I have no idea where they've gone. Like maybe to join AI companies or something. But there's just like there's less noise, there's less people trading. So I guess it just seems more dead. But I don't know if the actual number of wallets that are trading have, you know what I'm trying to say is like that might have really been the figure all along, but there's just like less optics around it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my take is that I still think Blur has had, a negative effect. I mean, everyone has their own opinions, but I think maybe it was fast tracking or accelerating what was the inevitable anyway. But it does feel like it's just, it's taken a lot of the gloss and shine, I think, away from the NFT market. Like whether you were in it for making money, whether you were in it for like whatever the reason was, you actually genuinely liked the art or whatever, there was a level of there's a level of interest in the aesthetics of NFTs and sort
Yeah.
of like searching through things. And I think what we're seeing now is just with Blur Farmers, it's just a hot potato of all these collections going
Well,
back and forwards. And I think it doesn't give it's very hard if you're sitting on the sidelines. Like I've bought very little in the last couple of months, and it's just a slow bleed down. I think nearly on every collection, with Azuki being sort of the outlier, and they have an
yes.
event coming up in Las Vegas in June, and this is the classic anticipation of something coming up. But I'd be very surprised if it holds its floor after the event. It just seems like
Yeah.
99% of the time when there's an announcement or an event that happens, everyone's sort of buying in the anticipation, and then there's a dump straight after. So it's a little bleak out there. Is I think my overarching message. I'm sure our listeners are feeling it the same.
Yeah, I think that. So I looked at something before, and this is going to give me. So I'll go back. Actually, the thing with Blur is that when everybody's trading on Blur, it was prompting kind of a shitcoin meta of like using NFTs as shitcoins, right? And there's been that saying all the time that they're just shitcoins with a JPEG attached to it, right? And that was kind of a meme, but it kind of prompted a certain type of behavior because and it's solidified that kind of behavior. Now people stop trading on Blur, and now they're just literally buying shit coins. So it's like that gambling mentality is still there, but it's just the focus just keeps moving. And I think that there's not many people buying, but it's because of that shitcoin meta right now. If that shitcoin meta shifts back to something new, like maybe it's going to not BTC things again, right? Maybe it's like soul NFTs. Maybe it's like whatever, right? The meta is constantly shifting, right? It was manifold mints, and so that's going to change to something else. It won't just stay on shitcoins. It might go back to NFTs. Like I don't know, but I think that that's why specifically it feels the most dead right now. The other fact is, if you look at some of these prices, I just pulled some up before the show. So Cool Cats 0.8 ETH, Doodles 2.43, Moonbirds 2.7, Clonex 2.77, and Mutants 11.37. So all of those projects at one point were considered like quote unquote investments. And I think that if you spend a lot of money on like a doodle last year, when they were like 15 ETH or 25 ETH at one point, and you're holding it now, like it's hard to be excited about the space, right? So that that kind of investment thesis, although we've known for a while that it was probably like a bunk thesis, has really disappeared. So investment thesis is gone because the blue chip assets, there's no blue chip assets besides the few that are proving to be the clear winners, right? Like Yuga stuff, Azuki as well, right? That's
Yeah.
gone. So then it's like, okay, well, that thesis is dead. So what's the new thesis? Oh, we'll trade shitcoins until everything comes back. So I think it feels the lowest of the low because probably it is, but things are cyclical and it will swing back. But I don't think that those NFTs will ever have their day in the sun again.
Yeah, I don't think anything's guaranteed there. There might be an outlier or two. It's sort of it sort of feels like, and you speak to anyone that's been in crypto for a while, that the cycles generally follow, at least in terms of sort of the crypto cycles within the overall macro cycles of sort of BTC and ETH into sort of more the altcoins,
Mm.
shit coins, and then comes around on NFTs. If the momentum and the meta does shift back to NFTs in the coming weeks or months or whatnot, I'm just fascinated how that plays out, though, from a Blur perspective, because
Yeah.
what Blur to me does is it seems like there can be short little rallies, but floors don't increase or ascend like they did when there was a world without Blur, because you constantly got people that can just dump
Yeah.
into bids. And I think what we're seeing and what we have been seeing really for the last, well, pretty much nearly all of this year is just this slow bleed down on Blur. And it's sort of like
Mm.
you're constantly looking for an uptick, like we've had in the general crypto markets. I mean, the last 24 hours has been pretty horrendous, but yeah, let's not forget for the last 2 or 3 weeks we did have a big upswing in sort of
Yeah.
BTT and ETH, etc. So there's just not those catalyst events, and then it feels like if there is a catalyst event, Blur eventually just grinds it back down. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting to note that like this time last year, the crypto market was way lower, right? But the NFT market was way higher, and I think that that's kind of the
No,
money's.
crypto market lower, as in ETH price.
Yeah, this is when the crash
No,
occurred. We went down
no,
to
no,
1200, didn't it? At this time,
no. That was in June. So
was it?
in April, yeah. In yeah, I can remember
I don't
this
know.
vividly.
I might
In
challenge that. Let me look.
it, yeah, definitely challenge it. I'll definitely put some money on that. In April last year, ETH was still hovering around that 3K mark, 4K Australian mark, and NFTs were still mooning. For the most part, you had Moonbirds that have just celebrated their 1 year anniversary. They were up. The other side drop happened pretty much May 1st, Australian time. So ETH had gone a little bit down from the start of the year and a little bit
Yeah.
sideways, but it hadn't had that big drop off. The big drop off started sort of second week of May when Terra Luna happened.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Let me. I'm still checking the data
And
because even
why you check that? I was going to mention too, Outlaws and Nakamigos have been two relatively hot mints and outliers the last couple of weeks, but Outlaws have just absolutely fallen off a cliff down to zero point zero 0.03 ETH. So their reveal was, I believe, last Saturday Australian time. So they were at 0.23 pre-reveal. So the classic, post-reveal dump,
yeah.
but they have shown very weak signs in terms of rallying. Nakamigos, I believe, got down to about 0.25 last night. They're back up to about 0.33 or zero point 0.3 at the moment. So
And I can
Nakamigos
confirm for the
showing a
listeners.
little bit of strength there.
I just confirm for the listeners that you were correct. So, yeah.
Yes, so
Yeah.
that's the best take. So someone, if we can clip that. All right, so that's on the doomy and gloomy side. But I definitely can't hide my somewhat disillusionment with the current NFT market. I think Blur is just this constant grey cloud over things at the moment. I'm sure some people might disagree with me, saying that it's not the only factor, and you're probably right, but it just feels like the dynamics of the NFT market have changed forever, and
Hmm.
I'll be interested to see how we sort of get out of this current sort of meta of just slow bleeds down, and get some excitement back. So, speaking of excitement, there was a little bit of excitement at New York, or in New York, for NFT NYC last week. Boot, you and I obviously weren't there. I was there last year. I believe it was around about 50% down on attendees, is what the
Mm-hmm.
word that I got, which I probably expected. They had moved it forwards 2 months. Looking from afar, it seemed like people had a reasonable time, but no 8 Fest this time around. World of Women had Madonna last year as well. No Madonna, no Moonbirds party, no Proof party, although there was some sort of side events. I know that Beeple did a live every day at a Moonbirds event, and my buddy Dan Cube actually won one of 10 Beeples. So congratulations and shout out to Dan. That was a amazing get for him. So from everything I heard, Moonbirds and Proof did a pretty good job with their party. I know D-Gods and Utes probably owned the week in terms of getting the most attention, which I expected with Frank, and also Pudgies, I think, played a bit of a role there. So, Boot, not sure if you saw much popping up or had any friends that attended NFT NYC.
Not this year. I mean, most people I know aren't doing anything at the moment. They're kind of just lying low. I'm sure a few of them went, but no one has broadcast to me that they went to New York. So I mean, that's also kind of a bear case for the current moment.
Yeah. One thing, speaking of Frank de Gods, so Steve Aoki actually bought a D-God or 2 D-Gods, I think it was, last week. And I found this tweet quite comical because obviously everyone said D-Gods are now down only because Steve Aoki, who has a history of buying, has the history of buying the top. So Frank had actually retweeted or quote tweeted himself of something he had said over a year ago where he was preparing for I should say for Steve Aoki to actually buy. D-Gods actually had a nice sweep overnight. They dropped down, I think, to about 7.5 ETH. It is quite interesting now to keep talking about D-Gods on ETH because when they're on Solana, I just feel like I didn't have a lot of visibility on them, but they're back up to 8.7. And shout out to also our friend from Nounsdale, Gami, who was involved in NFT Fest. Gami actually bought one of the more rare D-Gods a couple of weeks ago, I believe, for about 20 ETH. So if D-Gods are out of your range and you're looking to get into the dust ecosystem with Frank de Gods, I know that Utes is sitting around 1.75. I think I mentioned on our last show, we didn't have a show last week, that I was looking at Utes myself. I still am, still having a peek. I don't know where I might be a buyer. As I said, I'm sort of sitting on the sidelines for the most part at the moment. But I think Frank is playing the current NFT game, which is limited at the moment, the right way. He knows how to straddle the line of garnering attention and rallying a community. And I think that's what some of these other projects that are really struggling with, the Doodles of the world, the CloneX, I'd put Moonbirds in that category, even though I think they're battling, they're trying. But I think, it's not reflected in the floor price. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, those collections, forget about it. I mean, the value prop is not there. For me, I'm not going to buy any NFT at the moment, but if I was, D-Gods, Savvy Seals, anything in the Yuga ecosystem, anything that has MFs, right? Anything that has a strong community still, like, I think is the only way that floor price is going to get propped up. So
the interesting thing is, and I've actually been looking at MFs a lot the last month or two. I put an offer on one the other day, and it got sold at what it was listed at. So congratulations to the buyer. And I should actually shout out at MFs, in a world where we've been talking about Blur just grinding everything into a floor and no one caring about aesthetics or rarity. MFs have actually bucked that trend. Almost, I would say nearly every second day for the last week or two, I've noticed that hoodie MFs have been going around that 5 to 7 ETH mark. We've had sales of like an ape MF for over 20 ETH a couple of weeks ago. We've had a couple of a couple of zombie MFs go for sort of that 8 to 12 range. And then the interesting part too, I've had like even, and it's very, very subtle if you're not familiar with the MFs collection, but some of them have gold and silver chains, and they've been going at almost like a 1 ETH premium over floor. So, shout out to the MFs, but I was going to just defend a couple of the communities, particularly Moonbirds, which I'm still in, and I've been quite critical over the last few months of Moonbirds and Proof. It's interesting. I think there's actually still a reasonably strong community within Moonbirds. I think the thing that they've got to worry about at the moment, or the thing that is reflective in the market price and the floor price, is they've made this pivot to having this art focused vision, right? And I'm just not sure that there are, let alone 10,000. I'm just not sure there's 5,000 true art collectors that care about art at this point in time in NFTs. I
Mm.
think out of all the categories of NFTs, like I think art still has a real shot. When you think about all the different types of art that can be made. I just put out another thing for Cointelegraph earlier today on Brian Brinkman, who's an animator and a graphic designer, used to work for The Tonight Show
Yeah.
and Comedy Central and who else? Saturday Night Live. He said for 15 years he was making all this great stuff and he enjoyed his job, but he had no way to actually be independent. And NFTs have given him an opportunity to sell his art. And doing animations like that is pretty hard to stick that up on a wall unless it's like a
Yeah.
TV
Yeah.
screen. So, I think art still has a shot, but I think we're very, very early on that journey.
Yeah. I mean, it's been 2 years since the art bull run, right, at Nifty Gateway. So, I mean, that was insane there. And like, I mean, even then I think it was purely speculation. It was mostly flipping. It was degens buying. And I think people thought it was the art narrative and it was art for appreciation. Although there was people buying it for the appreciation, it was mostly to flip. And, I think we'll still continue to see large sales in the art market, in the NFT ecosystem. Just that, as you say, that's super limited and it's not going to be, like there's no mass appeal to that. So I think we're kind of at this crux point where, everybody's deflated. Like there's not much good news to talk about. So when there's not much good news to talk about, people go off and do other things, and it's like the attention moves away, and then prices fall because people are trying to get liquidity for whatever reason. So without another new narrative coming to the space, and there will be a new narrative, something will come, and there'll be a rally, and there'll be some. It's not going to be across the ecosystem, but it will be in those pockets where things are still, being worked on and being created. There's still a lot of money floating around. There's still a lot of people coming to the table, especially out of Asia. I know that Japan and South Korea still have really booming scenes, and they've yet to they're starting to dip their toe in to the water to kind of do stuff. So when I guess when some money comes from that side and some projects come from that side, you're going to see some interesting things into the space. Now, whether or not that lifts the space up, I mean, I don't think ever that's going to happen, but it will provide, liquidity opportunities for certain things, or at least revitalize certain things. I think that we always knew that 99% of NFTs were going to go to zero. I don't know why people had an investment thesis on a lot of these kind of cartoon JPEGs, but they did, and now they're kind of maybe questioning that. I don't know, but still holding because maybe something might happen. Who knows? The collection that you have right now could make some announcement next week and maybe 2x, but I don't think this is going to be like you buy something and then it's going to 50x, or that. I just don't think that's so rare that it would happen ever again. Or if it does happen, you're not the person who's going to be able to buy the NFT because everybody in the space is going to know that project is the one that's going to run. There's not enough people left in the space for there to be like a secret like a secret gem, basically.
Yeah, I think a fair bit still to play out. I mean, I can understand with the mania that we saw in 2021 and early 2022 that, prices got overheated, no doubt. But, I
Mm.
think that there's still going to be, I'm still bullish on the collectability
Yeah,
side of things with NFTs. So whether it's Pudgy Penguins, whether it's V Friends, whether it's like whatever it is, like there's going to be a couple of brands that will probably end up popping. The key question that we've sort of asked on this show, and you hear on Twitter many a times, is sort of like, how does that relate back to value accrual for holders?
yeah,
And does, like, if Pudgy Penguins ends up in all of targets, in most
it could.
countries, like, as soft toys and,
Yeah,
cartoons or like whatever, like, is that going to actually boost the floor price of Pudgy Penguins and Little Pudgies?
yeah,
I don't know. I don't
probably
know the
not.
answer of that.
Yeah,
Well, maybe
maybe a
not.
bit,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
but I think the question is the average consumer going to go and buy them? And to me, the answer is no. But is it going to create a narrative that drives price up for the current holders? Possibly yes, right? Because that's the speculative nature of that stuff. But I think that,
Yeah.
with those kinds of things happening in the space, it's still a good sign that there's interest. But we're talking about this as if like our pocket of NFTs is like the entire ecosystem. I mean, it is right now, but then like look at Reddit. Reddit has a way bigger percentage of people who hold NFTs, or just number of people who hold NFTs, than this entire quote unquote kind of what I don't know what you call our degen space, right? So it's like we're thinking of it as like, oh, our this is all fading. It's like, yeah, all that stuff is going to zero. Most of it's going to zero. But these new ecosystems will pop up, and the people that are kind of NFT natives will migrate and buy, and there's probably definite profit opportunities in some of these other segments. I do think that the ability to buy with credit card on digital collectibles is going to be like a meta. So when a lot of these things launch on platform, especially like something like Reddit, I mean, maybe they start launching brands through NFTs somehow. I don't know, but that's going to happen in other places. But then when that's happening there, people will go there like they did with Nifty Gateway and speculate with a credit card. So I feel like, although it looks like things are dead, it's just more that they're shifting and they're going in different places. And obviously, there's been a lot of removal of interest in this particular segment of the space, but in other segments of the space, I think they'll still continue to do really well.
So you've been able to buy on credit card, from my understanding, on OpenSea for over a year, and you've been
Yeah,
able to do
but
it on
that's
Nifty Gateway. So what, like, I'm interested in your thoughts around credit card, like being a catalyst.
well, I'm talking. So I don't think that having it on Nifty Gateway or OpenSea, I mean, yes, the functionality is there, but the average consumer isn't on those platforms. But if you can buy a digital collectible on a platform where consumers are, suddenly you open it up to like a whole new range of people buying. Now I'm not saying you put existing collections on there and then people will buy, because that's what everybody thought with this Coinbase narrative, and that didn't do anything, right? But if a platform like Reddit starts to like launch collections in and of its own, like to its own user base, or like the Amazon platform, I don't even know what that's going to do. But just say these big entities with an inbuilt user base come through and start launching digital collectibles, that then becomes kind of the OpenSea for its particular IP, and there is the ability to go in there and buy and make money flipping those kinds of things, or holding them for an investment purpose, because it's like, okay, well, there's 3 million Reddit users. Suddenly they have a marketplace for very specific IP brands under the Reddit logo. People might be trading those, and it's like, okay, you've got a much larger inbuilt audience who doesn't have any friction points to buy because it's just a credit card purchase. They don't need to learn anything about it. So I still think that it's such a small market whereby one big player can come in and actually create a parallel market that ends up just surpassing it. So
Mm.
we're like a dying empire, but like someone's going to come along and just build something completely new that could just define a new space.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of different verticals and niches. We've obviously got different chains, and we've got, incumbents like Amazon's one of the biggest companies in the world. And then we've got, our own sort of crypto culture. When I think about, I don't think, when you think about sort of the OGs like CryptoPunks and autoglyphs, chromie squiggles from an art perspective, these type of things, I really don't see those things going away. I think there is a pretty ingrained cultural aspect to how NFTs started, and there's always going to be
Mm-hmm.
that sort of journey story. And I think there's a lot of storytelling still to play out. But yeah, so I think our current community of Web3 NFT collectors that we've been accustomed to, is that going to continue to look different every day? Most likely, but I don't think that a lot of those collections that I mentioned are going away. What I think is pretty interesting is like the difference between you and I talking about floor prices and like the ability to make some money and play, blur farmers playing hot potato with NFTs, etc. Where we get to the point where, I'm quite excited about, and, I'm going to use an example here of the New York Knicks. And so POAP actually did an activation with the New York Knicks in the NBA
Mm-hmm.
last week, where they put up on the Jumbotron at Madison Square Garden a QR code, and it was a POAP that you'd attended that potentially, not that potential, but that actual Knicks game.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there was a lot of people going, what is a POAP? Why would I do this? What do I get? Was this stupid? Blah, 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 blah. But ultimately, I think the other example I'm going to give is Israel Adesanya winning in the UFC 2 weekends ago. So one of the things that I've always thought about, and I've said on this show before, is the ability to have like these digital collectibles, but that are actually the timestamps of your life. And I think I actually just ripped Poap's tagline then. But ultimately, like, instead of having ticket stubs, or instead of having like posters and memorabilia and all that stuff's fine. I mean, they don't need to go away. But when you think about all the concerts you've been to, sporting events, or just anything that you care about, music, um, they are sort of, they brings back nostalgia, and it brings back memories, like sort of flooding memories. And one of the things that I thought about the other day with Israel winning in Miami at UFC, it was an amazing win, and I was watching it at a pub, and it was just absolutely going off. And I was thinking, if you could offer an NFT to anyone in the stadium, and they could actually essentially own that moment for like $5 or $10 or something like very affordable, it sort of becomes another product offering. It doesn't replace IRL merchandise, or maybe you want something physical to hang on your wall. That's fine. But what you could do is you could actually give people that attended that game, or that fight, the opportunity, whether it's a window of 72 hours, 24 hours, 8 hours, I don't know what that is. Maybe you have to do it before you leave the stadium. And it's opportunity for you to actually have this sort of like collectible. And I think about my phone, like my camera roll on my phone. And there's a lot of times where I'll open up my phone to try to find an image or a screenshot that I've taken like a month or two ago. And I'll type in the month in my camera roll, it'll be like February 2023. And then I'll see all these photos, and I just get all these like memories like flooding back. Oh yeah, pretty much that's been my life in February, that event and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And I just think that there's a real opportunity there, where it's going to be like, when you go through your ticket stubs previously of all these things, if you're a bit of a hoarder, and it's going to be a way that you can sort of like showcase on social media if you want as well, of the things that you've attended.
But does that, like, I mean, I've always been bullish on that use case, right? I mean, Instagram was supposed to be the playground for that to transpire, right? Because it's like, well, there's nothing more than on-chain proof that you did something, right? Anyone can take a photo of something, but you can, verifiably prove that you were there by, on-chain. It's in a smart contract, right? So I think that that's a great narrative for like the tech use case. But I just feel like if you're in this DGen ecosystem, like, although that's a great use of the tech, it doesn't do anything for you. Like, it doesn't make the profile picture kind of ecosystem go up. It just means that, wow, the tech has been validated as having an actual real world use case, and blockchain is further validated by having that use case. But this particular weird little niche that we're in, I mean, it's purely speculative, so it doesn't need the masses aren't coming. I mean, to be fair, they aren't coming, but this will morph into something else that it is. But then the masses will go to use the tech, and again, we've always said it's like the best to onboarding is seamless onboarding, where they don't know what the tech is, right? I'm not sitting around, when I'm like doing something on the computer, going, "Wow, I mean, the technology in this screen is amazing. I wonder how all the computers working. Like the CPU is like, how was that built?" Like, it's like, no, you just take that for granted and you just turn it on the computer and use it. So tech, great use case, but NFTs they're not a product. You can infinitely scale them by just clicking a button. So like, I think it's great. Token gating is great, but it's really about, is the product good, and is that driving demand? And that's what people will care about. That they won't care about the tech below. We will, they won't.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I think my example is just to showcase that there's a lot of strings to the NFT and Web3 bow, right? Like there's obviously like digital art, music NFTs are still trying to find their feet. Same with sporting NFTs, the sort of example I gave then. And then you sort of have the quote unquote degen market and these projects that we're all accustomed to. So there's a lot of different, loyalty is something you've obviously spoke about a fair bit before Boot, and we've seen Starbucks continue to sort of innovate. I think they had a new announcement or drop even yesterday. I haven't unfortunately kept up with that one, but
I think that if you look at this as well, if you look at trends as well, I mean, think about stuff that's happened in the past. Like, remember the Internet of Things, where everything was going to be interconnected and et cetera. And everybody was super bullish on that. And then now no one really talks about it. It's still really good technology. It's still going to have a use case. It's just that the adoption curve is way further in the future, right? NFTs had that time in the sun. the adoption curve for them is much lower because it's very easy to buy a digital collectible, especially if you're not using wallets, etc. That are, or you have it inbuilt to your application. But the the narrative on then is kind of cooled off. Now it's on AI, right? AI is going to be booming. AI actually has a really solid use case. I don't think AI is a flash in the pan. I think AI is here to stay, and it might be at levels of a bit of hopium right now, but I really think that tech is. I mean, I use it every single day, right? So, and I wouldn't stop using it. So, if we're looking at this kind of trajectory, it's like, okay, well, if NFTs keep going down, at some point they're going to bottom out, and then it's going to become a stable kind of ecosystem. I think that a lot of brands that entered the space, maybe last year or the start of this year, and now they're caught up in that investor mentality and their stuff's not doing that well. They're kind of reticent to enter into the space again. A lot of brands that were watching those people do their play in the space because of bureaucracy or inter-organizational kind of issues, they couldn't get their product, they couldn't get their drop out in time. Now, like, hold on, validate the use case of NFTs for me again, because they're like, if they're not doing this, it's not working. The price looks down, so that they're sort of thinking they can do it without blockchain. But there are a lot of other companies who are like, no, we see the valid use case of blockchain because companies like Starbucks are doing it. We're currently building now. They might be doing it with their like R&D teams, etc. And then in 2024, that stuff will get rolled out and there'll be more adoption there. We're just kind of in this lull at the moment where those people aren't ready yet. The other people have pulled away. And then when those people put their product to market, the other people who have pulled away will look and see that that's working well, and then they'll enter the market. So 24, 25, I think, is when things will kick up again. This year is basically survival mode.
Yeah. I think another example of talk about sort of hype cycles when you mentioned Internet of Things or just things that I remember looking at this what were they called, voice apps essentially. Skills. I think Amazon Alexa Skills. So that was sort of like you had the Alexa in the home or the Google Home or whatever, and it was like, hey, Domino's Pizza, order me a blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I remember going down the rabbit hole for a couple of months on that, and that never really popped, and not because I think the sort of value proposition or the tech wasn't any good. It was just that I think your phone is so powerful. It's like, can I be like, if you're ordering a pizza, the visual component of doing it on your phone is probably going to trump saying like, hey, Alexa, order me, pepperoni pizza, versus like you doing it on the app. And it might save you, I don't know, like 1 second, 2 seconds doing it on voice versus the app. And I think there was also some hesitation, right, of people like, we were sort of in that 2017, 2018 mold. It wasn't even at the accelerated sort of rates that it is now in terms of people being cynical of like big tech, with all their devices listening in. And I think a lot of people hesitated to have these devices in their homes, and the skills just never really popped. Like the equivalent of a voice app never really popped, even though a lot of people use them for music and things like that.
It's partly demographics, right? Like, so I know that me and you are of a certain demographic, the millennials, right? And we are much more inclined to use voice, which I love to walk and talk, right? But the Zoomers that I know, like, they hate talking. They hate, and like, they just want a message and they want to click a screen, right? So the whole idea that like, they're walking around telling Alexa to do stuff and using voice commands, like, they're not. So it's like, it's a shift in like, who the demographic is. So yeah, I think that, and there's a lot of that stuff happening now in the NFT space as well, in that, there's a certain demographic that buy NFTs, this investor profile, things like that. But that's going to shift as well. We're so focused on that, and it's like, well, what's the like, where are the new buyers of this stuff going to come in? And I think it's more like people like Mr. Beast tokenizing his content and building his own platform off YouTube, right? That could necessarily happen. And it's like, then you have a whole new user that isn't us, that is accessing the tech and leveraging it and doing it in a different way. And I think that's fascinating. We just got to be aware that the shifts can occur based on, us being stuck using stuff in a way that we think that it should work, but then the younger generations be like, no, that's old. That's for old people.
All right, let's get on to two last things. We're going to talk quickly about Moonbirds. We didn't actually speak about Moonbirds for a show a couple of weeks ago, which was unusual because there's been a lot of Moonbirds chat. They announced, it was the 1 year anniversary of Moonbirds, and they announced their Diamond Nest exhibition, which the TLDR on this is with this new art-focused PFP, which we heard about a month or two ago. It's really a different version of Grails. Grails has been a pretty successful product that Proof Collective launched in early 2022. This Diamond Nest is 10,000 pieces of art. Beeple is one of the artists. You've got Summer Wagner, who's an NFT photographer I've heard a bit about. You've got Terrell Jones. I've done a Cointelegraph article on Terrell. I love actually Terrell's artwork. You want to talk about someone that I would just love to have their piece of art in my wallet for a decade to come, it would actually be Terrell at a decent price. Like I don't want to be paying multiple ETH for it. This is a way that they're rewarding diamond nesters, but I think it's a long way removed from what many people thought was coming at the 12-month mark when people had nested their moonbirds. And I do think that nesting played a psychological war with a lot of moonbird holders in the sense that they didn't want to break their streak, thinking that there were goodies coming at the end of the rainbow. Well, we now have the rainbow, and it is a piece of art. The airdropped mint pass. The airdropped mint pass is at about a 0.25 floor right now. I got two of them. I have two birds left. I should have taken a WETH offer last night when I saw them airdropped. I think the WETH offers were at 0.55 or 0.6 immediately. I felt like it was going to grind down to 0.3 or 0.25, but I don't know. I've got a little bit of fatigue, I got to say, Boot, in terms of just like constantly being on and, you know, always being around your wallet. And like sometimes you're having a glass of wine or you're out or whatever, like you sort of miss the boat. And this sort of always on mentality or always needing to take action gets a little exhausting. So for me, I'm just riding it out. I do hope that I can, you know, I've got a limited shot at getting a Beeple. But even if I landed a Terrell or something like that, I think I'd be quite happy with that. The other thing that has happened this week with the Moonbirds ecosystem is the introduction of Mythics. So all Moonbirds holders were able to claim their Mythic eggs. There are two types of eggs, legendary and runic, and then there's the third category, which is going to be essentially a regular egg, which you can get by burning oddities. Those eggs at about a 0.3 floor at the moment for the lower tiered eggs, and probably about 0.4 for the higher tier. The interesting thing about this, Boot, is there's now three ways you can get a Mythic. It's going to be a 20K collection that is drip fed out, no more than 100 Mythics a day. So it'll take roughly 200 days to mint them all. But here's the interesting thing, right? So if you get an egg, it evolves into a Mythic. If you've got the legendary egg, which is the top tier, you get a choice of 3 Mythics. You can only choose one, right? So you can essentially pick the one that resonates with you the most. If you have the second tier egg, the runic egg, you get 2 choices. And if you have an oddity, and this is again from my understanding, because the comms has been a little unclear at times, oddities, you will get a chance of 1. You'll just be like, you'll burn it, and then the Mythic will show up, and that's what you got. So the interesting thing right now is people are speculating on, you know, there's a premium on the legendary egg by about 0.15, I think, over an oddity, but you're actually still going to get the same Mythic. It's just that you're going to have a different choice. So you know, I suppose the argument there is you've got more chance of getting a rare Mythic by having the legendary egg. But interesting there. Again, you know, I think the play always on these things, and you know, if you are near your computer or phone or however you're doing your NFT transactions, I think always the play in this current market is to try to sell almost immediately when sort of FOMO and prices are a little bit higher, because you know, I think almost within 10, 20, 30 minutes sometimes when things like this happen, you just see the floors starting to grind down and grind down and grind down. And there's just not these catalyst events that happen to sort of push floors up, which we've seen obviously and been accustomed to in that sort of hype cycle. So a bit going on at Moonbirds. The last thing I'd say, Boot, with Moonbirds and Proof is they announced somewhat of a token, but the way that Kevin described it was to think more credit card points. So they're calling
Mm-hmm.
them talons.
Okay.
So nesting will cease to end. Nesting, not yet, but in I think the coming weeks. And what they're going to do to reward holders is they're going to retroactively award talons to people that have been nesting. Also, Proof Collective pass holders will get a multiplier for talons, and Mythics will accumulate talents too. But in that tiering system, you'll have Proof Collective at the top, Moonbirds second, and Mythics third. What will talons be used for? My understanding at this point in time will be essentially within the proof ecosystem. But Kevin did use the phrase, this is our beta token. So I think this is somewhat of an experiment with talons. And then I think they will go on to launch a token into the greater or into the broader ecosystem. But yeah, it's a lot to take in the proof ecosystem, but we've once again seen after an announcement, and I must admit, I thought the announcement was the best they could do in this particular market. They still teased a little bit of anticipation of things to come. They had a great animation trailer for their Mythics as well that went for 60 seconds, but it's almost like there's just about, other than Azuki, even Yuga's copping it at the moment, and Bored Ape floors down, and I never like to see that. So yeah, it's just a tough market if you're a project founder out there. Seems like
Yeah,
no
yeah,
matter what you do, it's just still going to grind down.
yeah. I think that again, those projects with the strongest communities will stay the longest, and those with the strongest narratives. Like, I mean, obviously, Yuga's doing it like relatively tough at the moment, but it's still doing, you know, really good, right? Like in comparative terms. So
Yeah.
I think that it looks kind of doom and gloom, but then the longer, like they only just have to outlast. Like they have money, right? They can do it. Whereas some of these other quote unquote blue chips, although they made money, we don't know what they did with it. It's not like they have funding. They're not really good on comms. I'm talking to Doodle specifically. Can they outlast? No, they can't because they're already going to zero basically. So once those things like settle, there's going to be the clear winners, and the clear winners will be the things that stick around. Will we see the prices that we saw in the past? No, we'll never see that again. That's never coming back, even though people say that it is. So it's about like picking the things that you think are going to win long term. But I mean, honestly, don't buy it if you think you're going to make money off it, because like, I mean, you might have the balls and you might go and buy a mutant now, and then the floor goes to 15. I mean, that could happen, right? That's the kind of stuff that's happening. But you're not going to buy a doodle now and the floor is going to go to 7 or something like that. That won't occur. So you really have to be putting in the bigger conviction plays to make any money at the moment.
Well, apologies to any of our doodles holders out there, as Boot has just put the nail in the coffin with
Well, they did it
those
themselves. Like,
comments.
yeah.
All right. Lastly, Boot, I wanted to throw it to you about what we did see 2 weekends ago. I think it was Gremplin, who is
Mm-hmm.
obviously an NFT artist, and Cryptodes, and did the noggles and the nouns. He put out, I believe it was 69 pieces of art
Yeah.
on a manifold contract. And to get this NFT, this piece of art from Gremplin, you had to burn a Nakamigo. And that was the
Yeah.
only way you could get it. So it actually lowered the Nakamigo supply. I
Yeah.
hadn't seen this before. Had you seen this before?
Well, I don't know if there was an easy way to do it before. I mean, like the burns traditionally with projects in the past was like you just send it to a burn address and like manually click transfer on OpenSea and just send it to the dead address, and then you would like send that transaction in, and they would verifiably prove that you did the thing, and then they would drop you an NFT. So you could always have, this was always able to be done. It's not like a new thing. It's just that the way that they're doing it now is much more streamlined. I actually don't know how it's working in terms of tech because I didn't look into it too much, but like
Yeah.
Manifold has created the system. So they're going to be allowing this to kind of roll out for anyone who wants to put a project out, right? So you can tactically go, well, yeah, you burn this collection to get access to this collection, and burn that to get access to this, and it's like it's weaponizing NFTs to a degree, and removing like the total supply. But I think that's kind of good because like if people want your work, they can make it disappear to get something. I think you raised this point before of like Yuga comes out going, okay, we'll give everybody this if you burn your doodle, and it's like, oh, suddenly doodles lose 5,000 NFTs, right? Or people start scooping doodles and they go to the highest ever because people are trying to burn them to get something into man. I think that's kind of an interesting and smart mechanic to kind of make easier to use in these downtimes. So I'm kind of for it. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone can be arguing against going, oh, well, then there's not going to be 20,000 Nakamigos anymore. It's like, dude, like, we don't need 20,000 Nakamigos. Like,
Well, I think I definitely just think it's fun, a new mechanic, something else to sort of think about. The interesting thing though is like to me, how did Gremplin, and I'm sure Gremplin's fine and well off, but how
yeah,
did Gremplin make any money out of that? Because I believe there was no ETH transaction, right? Like, so essentially the Nakamigo left. The holder no longer had a Nakamigo, but they had the Gremplin art, and
yeah.
Gremplin just gets the fun of doing it,
Oh, I think,
essentially.
yeah. I mean, your Gremplin
Yeah,
is pretty
yeah,
loaded. So, like, I
yeah,
mean, why not? It's only 69 pieces. So,
yeah.
like, yeah, you can do, and then it puts you on the map and it's a good marketing exercise. And yeah, so there's a lot of those artists that could kind of do that kind of thing. I would expect like someone like Alpha Centauri Kid to do something like that because he's always doing
Yeah.
up to that kind of stuff. So I'm keen to see it because it kind of puts more fun back into the space.
Yeah, I agree. Fun's a good way to talk about this, I think, definitely. And what a way to finish, actually, because we started with the Dark Clouds boot,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we've ended with the fun. So thank you so much for joining us on episode 33 today.
No
Do
worries.
you want to plug your Twitter handle for the listeners?
Sure, I haven't posted in 6 weeks, but
Okay,
it's at lowercase boot. Give me a follow.
lovely. And you still got the Sappy Seal?
I do have a Sappy Seal. Yeah, I'm gonna maybe offload a couple more that I have just to hold some stables and see what happens. But I'm never selling my profile picture Sappy Seal. Yeah.
All right. Well, we've got a couple of good clips from Boot today. We have "You Are Definitely Right, Greg." We've got "Doodles Are Dead," and "I'm Never Selling My Sappy Seal." So we're going to have to
Those are all
hold you
true.
to all
Yeah,
three.
yeah.
All right. Thanks again for joining us. Disclaimer: everything on today's show, as all weeks, is for entertainment and informational purposes only. Nothing is financial advice. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.